Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin. I'm here at the 2019 September Metal Investors Forum in Vancouver. I'm here with one of the companies that was invited by Gwen Preston, but it's also followed by me. Gwen won the coin toss or something, so Darwin ended up in her speaking block. Darwin is the CEO of a brand new company that was formed by the spin out of a bunch of gold projects from a company I followed for many years called Constantine Metals. He's got a great set of gold assets. Why don't we lead off with what I know everyone's going to be viewing as the primary property, and I guess it is, which is Johnson in Alaska. This thing was undercover, and I mean unknown, for a very long time. I mean, why did it sort of disappear and then reappear again? I mean,
No, it's a good question, and it's. I've worked in Alaska for coming on 20 years, and I actually hadn't been aware of this property at all.
Right.
It was that sort of undercover, which is a shocker because it's got some meat on the bones. It's a pretty impressive property.
Yeah.
It was discovered in the 80s by Anaconda, which was a major copper producer at the time. They kind of, things got nationalized in Chile. Astarco came in, and it transferred hands ultimately to Westman Resources, who looked at I think there's just shy of 90 holes drilled. They looked at doing an internal PFS, where they did an internal PFS, and then everything kind of shuttered for Westman. They got sold. Boliden took them over. The North American assets just got shut down, or this did anyways, and it went back to Siri, the native corporation that owns it. And it was different times back then. It was post-Bre-X. Nothing was happening in the gold space, and it kind of just got shelved. And I think it got forgotten about within Siri itself. And they were, they're a very sophisticated group, very well-off native corporation. They've got oil and gas leases. They've got real estate in the Anchorage area, and I just think it wasn't a priority. And then things changed. They brought on a new landsman who dusted off the project, and they went looking for a partner, and with a very, very short list of people that they wanted to do business with.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, when you look at this project, which is very impressive, I mean, just for, at the geoporn level, I'll get you to reel off a couple of drill intercepts. But obviously, I mean, I've got to think that the amount of time that you and, of course, Garfield has spent working on the Constantine assets in Alaska and the reputation you have there, I mean, that had to factor pretty largely in them coming. I assume they came to you?
They did come to us, and I did feel good, honestly. I mean, we do pride ourselves on doing good work and doing things right. Yeah. And I think reputation counts in the state. It's a huge state. I think a lot of people don't realize how big it is, but it's a relatively small population, and there's not that many guys working up there. And they came to us, and there might have been some others on the list, but we jumped at it. We saw the opportunity. It's a pretty exceptional opportunity to come our way.
And I guess the main zone. I mean, you want to reel off a couple, because the intercepts are just, they're crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's 70 meters of 20 grams, 100 meters of 10 grams gold, on both gold. And what's particularly interesting about this project, and then there's several of those sort of 50 to 100 meter type intersections, is along with the gold, you've got base metals. There's 5 to 10% zinc and 0.5 to 1% copper. Some lead and silver credits as well. So, bit of a unique system. It's really an unusual bird, if you will, but it's it's got width and it's got grade and it's got continuity, and we see a lot of upside to grow it from here.
And away from the main zone, I mean, one thing that's definitely of interest is, there's a main zone that's somewhat well defined, but you're fairly confident looking at the historic data, and I guess you probably get people in the field working now, that there's a potential extension, but two, there's completely different targets. It sounds like didn't really get a lot of work historically.
Yeah, I think what happened is there was a lot of good early work in terms of silt sampling and looking at visual anomalies and surface rock sampling and stuff like that. And it really defined quite a number of prospects over like a 13-kilometer trend. But very quickly, the main deposit area became the main story. And then it was just a bit of timing in terms of, transferring of hands. And the groups were focused actually mostly on trying to, after they defined it, where the offset of the system went, and it wasn't. And they kept chasing it north. They knew what the offset was on this fault, and they knew the direction it went. They just didn't know how far. And it was really their last couple of holes, they picked it up again. And it's extremely distinct alteration and mineralization style, so you know when you're in it. And they found it again, but they've kind of what looks like the edge of it rather than the heart of it. So that's the northeast offset target. And then beyond that, you fly around, and they're valley scale alteration zones that you can see, and when you've been around, been in the business a while, you can just see systems that are big systems, and there's more around, and there's good geochemistry at these other ones. So yeah, we see a tremendous amount of opportunity there, and I think in part, that's one of our big investors is a senior North American gold producer. They're obviously not in it for a 500,000 or 600,000 ounce gold equivalent deposit. Well, some people might develop that, but our vision is about testing that bigger picture.
And yeah, one thing that's definitely bears commenting on too. I mean, the company will start trading soon. We hope. This isn't the one downside of the sudden reemergence of the gold bull market is that everybody's throwing stuff at the exchange, so it's been a little slow turning stuff around. You're not the only person I've heard that from, but you have a pretty exceptionally tight share structure. I think it was 15 million shares.
Yeah, that came over from Constantine. Yeah,
and then essentially everything else is a 45-cent placement.
Yep, that's right.
So this is a deal where there is no cheap stock. There isn't much float for that matter because it is a placement. So none of that new stock is tradable.
Yeah.
So
and most of the group, we were quite disciplined in how much we took because there was a lot more on offer.
I can attest to that. He was very difficult to talk stock out of.
Well, the pricing was done in the late spring before the gold run up, right? Like it was, and at the same time it was spin out of Constantine, so we kind of had a cap on us based on Constantine's market cap. Because how can you value this new thing at the same as value as the old one? So there should be a lot of, it's spring loaded right now, if you will, and it's going to be interesting to see where this thing lands after the first couple of days of trading. We do expect to be well north of that 45-cent financing, and because since that time, you've had this huge run up on gold, in gold, and
and I don't think even now, if you're not a Constantine shareholder, it's not likely you've looked at the project. I mean, nobody else had. Like, I'd never heard of it when you guys picked it up last year.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I went burrowing around and found a couple of old articles, but it was hard to find anything because it had been undercover for so long. But the other one other thing I want to mention, because you do have you've got Johnson, but then you do have some stuff in the Timmins camp, and I specifically want to mention that. Keeping in mind, I mean, those of you that know how the financing and security stuff works, they're essentially doing a placement, and there's use of proceeds that's defined in that placement based on the 43-101, which is just on Johnson. So I know going into this, before I even asked the question, that in order to answer yes to it, it probably implies some financing between now and whenever. But you do have this stuff in Timmins, and I'm bringing that up because Timmins, like a lot of the Shield, there's a lot of stuff that's actually easier to do in the winter, much less possible. It's actually easier a lot of the time. And I think Timmins kind of removes the seasonality issue, which is just it's always that 800-pound gorilla in the room if you're working in a place like Alaska or the Territories.
Yeah, or even northern BC. No, absolutely. You hit it on the head. I mean, it can be an issue. The reality is it's sometimes a benefit for companies because it allows them to think more wisely about what they're doing with their use of proceeds. So you usually see these northern companies have way better hit ratios than people that can operate year round. That said, the news flow dries up. And in our case, we have this fantastic portfolio. I mean, I think you could form a company around our Ontario assets alone, but for us, they're definitely second tier to Johnson, but a fantastic opportunity and one within the Constantine. When they were within Constantine, we just couldn't get after them. We wanted to and couldn't because everything was going to Palmer. So yeah, we're really keen on these, and obviously Croesus, it's just spectacular, high grade. It gets the heart running when you see that. But there's much more to the story than that. We're kind of taking a new approach to a mature district, and we've got big, sizable land positions and lots to do there. Between now and Christmas, we plan to do some fairly low-level work in terms of boots on the ground, a bit of assessment reporting, but kind of tee up some drill targets with the idea that maybe do another placement to fund that early in the new year sometime to do some drilling.
Croesus, for instance, you guys did do some work a couple of times in the past. I mean, I would think you're pretty close to having drill targets on that. You kind of know what you want to do there.
We do for sure. But one of to help, I guess, tell the story of the drill targets. Everyone knows the incredibly high grade.
Well, a lot of you probably don't. But if you went to the Ontario Museum and looked at their absurd high, percent gold samples, the beautiful samples. I mean, they bought them because they're beautiful. most of those come out of creases.
That's right. Yeah. They're large samples, literally in the percents, over 10,000 ounces per ton type stuff. And that came from a vein that was mined out. It was a small deposit, but literally probably the highest grade gold mine in Ontario, mined out to a fault. So what we see there is we've kind of cracked the code really through Garfield's historic work. It's very much an analog to beta hunt in Australia in terms of specific veins crossing specific units and geology. And we see the opportunity for repeating that within that immediate environment. So that's a go-to target. But what's less well known is sort of a more conventional Timmins style opportunity. And the same veins actually extend more than a kilometer back to the Pipestone Fault, which just along trend hosts multi-million ounce bulk tonnage gold deposits, which is probably your primary plumbing system of the whole deal. And we've got several of these veins that have historic pits.
Off the big.
Well, they're not. They're almost like they're at right angles. They're like separate
Okay.
deals, but they have gold all along them and pits on along them, and but nothing's been done on them probably since the 30s and a lot of these things. And so we'd like to tee that up a bit better for some follow-up. So there's kind of a 1-2 story to Creases itself, and then beyond that, we've got some other opportunities in Ontario that we're keen to reveal with time. Sort of a couple of dark horse kind of properties, actually.
Okay. The company name, it's a brand new company, is HighGold Resources. The symbol, amusingly, is HAIG because, Darwin's a dude. And it's a great deal. I mean, Johnson, it's worth looking at just for Johnson. It's such an impressive looking project. But I've always really liked this up in Ontario. Darwin can attest to the fact that over the years I've pestered he and Garfield about working on those projects. So I'm really happy to see them spun out and getting worked on. This is a deal you really want to take a look at, and it's coming to a theater near you in a few days from now. Thanks very much.